Yeah, it's because we only got 2 theaters at the time. Like,
Yeah, I thought it was on the
And then did you like look at the staff box to see that he's on the staff box? Okay.
that far.
see.
I thought you
Eat a big one.
Yeah.
Your
I'm sorry for the order.
I skipped it.
Yeah.
I mean that like the least offensive way possible.
I haven't been to the same meeting in a long time.
Yay.
meeting to order at 8:06 p.m. So text in, here's the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from last time? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great, passes. Okay, so here, you can just go. So we have like a really packed agenda, so I thought I was gonna start today with just kind of some like fun stuff. So, no. So Megan texted me a picture of her cat today, and I was looking at it, and something really caught my eye, so now you can go. So I was like looking at it, kind of like zoomed into its eye. I was like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden I saw something. And it was a picture of Andrew Stout. And then he was wearing this medal, and I was just really confused. And I was like, what does it even say? No. So this is basically me apologizing for a kind of a terrible amount of stuff on the agenda. But if you guys read the Thresher today, I was criticized for not being harsh enough or letting people be harsh. So I thought I'd also start off today with a little bit of sass. So this is what I'm going to call Real Talk with Robbie. So I searched Will Rice on Google, nothing else but Will Rice, and this was the 6th image. Really, Will Rice? Really? Naked people?
It was an OB group. Those were that was a picture for that. It was OB. And it was dreaming about being naked or something.
Still, really, Will Rice? Okay, next slide. And then I also wanted to talk about some fashion trends that are stupid. Sorry, Mary. So Birkenstocks are great, but Birkenstocks with a weird middle thing that goes in between your toe, not cool. And anything unrelated, not cool. Hopefully, everyone who thinks that I don't sass enough / allow sass are now convinced otherwise. No more angry op-eds about me. All right. So now onto the real show. So this is super exciting. We just learned from RUPD, so we were looking into kind of some of the parking issues and possibilities of notification. And so RUPD has agreed to basically notify Rice-affiliated people whose cars have been towed on noon of the second day of the violation, and they have 5 hours to move the car before it's actually towed. And thanks to Jazz for kind of pulling us all together and talking about it and kind of bringing this to the forefront. But this is super exciting. So this is going into effect 2 days ago. So.
Maybe probably unrelated, but can you park for more than 2 days in all lots without being towed, or does the time of being towed vary depending on the lot?
So based on what this says, it is any lot. I don't actually know how that's.
Because if you're in North Colleges or South Colleges or something, and you're that asshole.
I'm sorry, what?
So it's because of the non-gated lots, there's relatively routine issues with people who just don't have a permit for the lot parking lot.
Yeah, so I mean that's something we'd have to ask.
And if they can camp out for 2 days, that's
Well, so this only applies to Rice affiliated people. I think there's a different process that applies to non-permanent people. So all this is saying is that if you're a Rice person who's I forgot I left my car in North Colleges, or I forgot I left my car in North Lot, you'll get an email that says getting your car towed, which is cool. Yeah, you'll still get a ticket, but it's just you don't have to maybe it was a sincere accident, there's a little bit of slack in here, welcome to 2014. So cool. Up next. Okay, so a little bit of bad news. Monday, I met with John Cornwell of the OIE about the survey of all students we talked about last week. Basically, I took the feedback we kind of came to during the meeting last week, and basically he had like through counterpoints. So basically, he thought that so as a refresher, kind of what we thought last week was like, this is kind of a good idea, maybe not the greatest idea. Some people thought that, but it would be great if we could move it to like the grade reveal part of grade reveal part of evaluation. So you have to like do this survey to see your grades. And so he had a couple of feedbacks, like points to that. So like he, as on principle, never has surveys up during exams because that's a high stress time. And he thought that basically taking a survey that's associated with immediate rewards, so basically like you would see your grades are up and then go and take this survey, and so it's like an immediate reward. And so he thought that associating it with an immediate reward rather than with like an open 2-week period, which would be what the registration period would be like not that great of an idea. And then finally, like his counterpoint to like, oh, you can't mandatorily have people take surveys. The survey is technically not mandatory, so like if you wanted to, you could just click through the entire thing and provide blank answers. But like the important aspect of it is that providing feedback on surveys is really an integral part of being part of the Rice community and like this culture of providing feedback. So like basically, I think it's still going forward, and we have some amount of say, but this is also something that's super important to Rice. So like, there's aspects of it that we don't have a say in. And so basically, I'm having Amrita, Trent, Peter, and Chris kind of like collect questions from the different initiatives that we're working on across the essay, and recommending questions that we're going to submit for this survey. And so if you have any ideas, if you're working on a project that you want to get some questions on, just talk to them, and we'll try to incorporate that as best as possible. But like any feedback, I guess on that. Cool. Okay, part 3 of my spiel. We are looking currently for a new provost. So the provost is basically like the chief academic officer of the university. As students, we really don't have much like interaction or know what they do, but their role is actually super important to students. So they basically like decide which academic programs get a lot of focus, decide which faculty to hire to kind of focus on, and like decide the culture of teaching and other kind of like outside of the classroom initiatives that really affect us. So basically, they're in charge of our curricular experiences and even the experiences outside of the classroom. And so we have the opportunity to kind of provide some like strategic directions, thoughts, inputs. Do we want someone super focused on the math and sciences? Do we want someone super focused in humanities? Do we want someone super focused on like teaching excellence? But yeah, so we have the opportunity to like give some input to the president's office and the committee that's looking for the new provost. And so I thought I'd just kind of open that up to thoughts, discussion points, ideas. Or nothing.
Do you know if the search is going to be primarily external or if they're looking internal?
I think they're doing both. So like the idea is that they're going to both consider people from outside of Rice and people internal to Rice. So I think it's like a steering committee of like 12 faculty members or something like that. Basically, like since they're like is really like they're hiring and firing faculty, so faculty have like a really important stake in that. And then basically what we worked out is that like that committee will kind of decide the number of candidates, and then we can have a student on like the final committee that actually interviews the candidates and provides recommendations as to the final one.
I feel like this is obviously not the main focus of who to pick, but something that should be considered is what they think about stuff like language programs and other areas that have been controversial over the past couple of years. And like, I feel like it would be important for the committee to understand like what their views on those topics are, because that's something that has concerned a lot of students in various forms.
Okay. Any other general thoughts? Cool. Okay. We can move on to So finally, the last thing I've got is basically the H&D person who manages the Barnes & Noble bookstore kind of reached out to us and asked, how can the bookstore better serve the Rice community? And thinking a little bit of it is in part due to the Thresher article about them the week before. But basically, like, this is an opportunity for us. I think they're renegotiating their contract either this year or the upcoming year. So like, if there's any ideas about, what can the bookstore do? What's, instead of just selling books, what other services can it provide to the Rice community? We kind of have the opportunity to both provide input here, and then she's also putting together these like focus groups that will meet with like the bookstore managers and H&D people to kind of discuss about like what are student priorities when we're renegotiating that contract. There's any thoughts right off the bat on that?
No Rice-specific textbooks that you have to buy from the bookstore in like Loose Leaf for $150. I know they did that for like Math 101 and 102, and that's ridiculous. They're like, oh, it's cheaper because you can come back and we'll give you half your money back, except if you use an edition that is used by the rest of the world, you can get it for $10, and that's way less than half your money.
What is the extent of actually renegotiating this contract? Like, what are they trying to get out of it?
So it's like, I think the way the business, the bottom line is I have no idea, but my speculation is that like, I think everybody in the RMC, they like have on renewing contracts, and so like maybe 3 years, 5 years, and at each like 5 years they'll renegotiate, and like they'll say, okay, Barnes & Noble pays like this much for rent, or maybe they pay this much of their proceeds. And so we kind of have the opportunity to say like, oh, when you renegotiate the next time, like one thing we really want is X, and it'd be great if you got rid of Y moving forward.
Because I know talking to Dean Hutch, like they specifically have a non-compete agreement with Barnes & Nobles, and if possible, I would like that to be examined, because that limits a lot of people from obviously creating and selling nice merchandise that may be cheaper cost than the bookstore does.
Anybody else?
An idea we've been kind of throwing around is like maybe Chester's bookstore. I don't know if that has anything to do with contract, but
So anything about like services that they could provide? So obviously, you can buy your books on Amazon. So what are other things that, that a bookstore should be serving?
Is there any kind of possibility of kind of like a book buyback at the actual bookstore as an alternative to kind of selling to the classroom or selling to Amazon? So just do directly on campus.
Anybody else? Okay, cool. So if you're super interested in this topic or like have additional thoughts, I'm going to try to be wrangling together some people to talk with the people at H&E and the people at the bookstore. So just let me know via email, and I can make sure that you're on that. Otherwise, I'll be begging people to do that. Okay, so next up we have Joan, who is going to go over the budget. We introduced this 2 weeks ago, and so basically we have a vote for its approval. Any questions, feel free to ask Joan, otherwise. So we'll pull it up.
Hey guys, basically nothing about the budget has changed. It was just a proposed budget, so if you have any questions, let me know. You all should have, all of the people on the senator's listserv and the exec listserv, and I think we sent it out to the general essay listserv. I wrote sort of like just a short document explaining why some funds are budgeted the way that they are and some of the changes that we've made for the year, but just the basic structure of the way that the budget is organized is still the same, just because it's worked in past years. And one of the major things that we've addressed is how to use the rollover and how to make sure that the rollover doesn't happen again. So. Hey, John. Yeah.
Which was fun.
No, we still.
So just as a quick reminder, you all should have gotten an email telling you about the initiatives fund. That is the way that we're spending a lot of our rollover this year, which is basically just sort of like a big pot that any group under the SA, like any committees, the exec cab, senators, you can all request additional funding on top of the funds that you've already been allotted. Yep.
All right, so is there a motion to?
Motion.
Second. All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Great, okay, that passes. So one exciting thing is that as part of like the office supply / renovation thing, I managed to get the TVs for a Brockstein Pavilion. So there's like 4 50-inch plasma TVs. So instead of having to buy new ones, we can do that and find money from other places to do cool things. So that's exciting. Yeah.
For the teacher stuff, when would we be seeing that?
Okay, yeah, so the whole reason why the t-shirts have not happened yet is because I was waiting for the budget to be approved. So now that you've all voted on it, we will get the t-shirts and start using those for different SA events. Yeah. Yay.
Cool. Okay, so next up is basically kind of prior to talking about the CC legislation from last week with additional revisions. I just wanted, so the CC just had its first meeting, I think last week, and so I wanted the CC reps to come up and just basically a quick overview of what that meeting was like, what they talked about, answer any questions, just to increase a little bit of transparency. So, we have 4 reps who Christy's collectively on behalf of them.
All right, I'm Christy. I am the Brown Senator, and I'm also on the CC. So we had our first meeting on Friday, and one of the things that they brought up, again, just briefly, was the ad drop limit proposal that they brought up last year. So basically, last year in March, they decided it was too complicated and they didn't have enough time to address the issue, so they tabled it. And then during this meeting, she wasn't really asking for opinions or anything. She just kind of generally wanted to like bring it up again and kind of see like where we would take it from here. So right now the registrar is they're going to collect and have like a really formalized like data collection of this year's registration process. So after week 7, which is October 10th, so that's the drop deadline, they're going to accumulate all of this data and like analyze it and then present it to the CUC, I'm thinking, and then the CUC is going to probably try to write a proposal and then present it to the Faculty Senate. So in terms of the timeline of how everything's looking, I'm thinking that if the drop deadline is October 10th, right now the CUC is scheduled to meet on the 24th of October and November 14th. So they do have quite a bit of time, like 14 days, right, to get the data from the time week 7 ends to our next meeting. So if the data were to be accumulated by then, I'm thinking we would talk about it and probably have a proposal written or like made and voted on for the CUC by the November 14th meeting. Yes.
Is this a vote that would be taken prior to hearing about this in the Student Senate? Because I would encourage our student representation to advocate against any CUC votes before we hear what the proposal is.
Okay, I don't actually know like what the process will be like, but I can ask and see like, so another thing that was brought up in the senator meeting was if we were allowed to see this data, like that when they, finish analyzing it or whatever. And I also don't have, it just got brought up, so I haven't like asked about it yet either. But I can definitely get feedback on how to get like the best and most student input.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that any proposal from the CEC before being brought to the faculty senate is brought to the student senate as well.
And I don't actually, Susan, who's the person who's kind of like in charge of the CEC, didn't really like say, she wasn't really specific like, oh, we're gonna bring it up on the October 7th, 24th meeting. She was kind of like, oh, we'll readdress it when we have concrete data from the registrar, probably in November. And I just looked it up today, and our last meeting of the CEC for the semester is November 14th. So I'm thinking if like she actually wanted to, if the faculty was pretty adamant on trying to get it done as quickly as possible, it would probably be brought up on the 24th of October and then try to be addressed by the November 14th. So, yeah. Does that make sense? Are there any questions? Yes.
Also, if the CUC approves it, does it go into effect or does it go to administration?
No, it goes to faculty senate. So basically the CEC, what they're there for is just like, it's supposed to be a representative group of all the people to basically are the experts at it and kind of delve into it more deeply about all the curriculum stuff. They make a proposal of what they think is the best idea and then they present it to faculty senate and faculty senate votes on it. Yeah, so it would, so I'm thinking if November 14th, let's say something were to actually get passed, it would most likely, like, it would get brought up at the Senate meeting after that, the faculty Senate meeting after that. So it'd be like, I don't know if they have it in late, yeah, so it would probably be brought up next semester, like first thing, if that were the case. Yeah, so that's pretty much all about AdDrop. Are there any more questions just about AdDrop? Okay. Also, that wasn't the only thing we talked about. We didn't really talk about it for very long. So David Tenney, he brought up kind of possibly having a limit on the number of undergraduate degrees you can get at Rice. So it wasn't, he just wanted to have like a discussion about it. So basically what his thinking was basically that Rice students tend to try to do as much as they can. And so because they come in with a bunch of AP credit, they're like, oh, I can fit 3 majors in 4 years, which also causes more special registrations, which also causes more like, oh, if I can't take this test at this time, I won't be able to graduate with 3 degrees in 4 years, which are kind of like, oh, maybe you should reconsider like getting a minor or like trying to do like a certificate instead to try to like broaden instead of just focusing on a couple majors. However, I don't really think that this really applies to that many students. So they said that last year, usually around 20% of students have 2 majors, double major. And I think they, essentially if they would cap it at, they wouldn't make it less than 2. Because I think they're like fine with that, it's just like more than that. But only in the last graduating class only had 1 to 2% of the student body triple or quadruple major. So like, apparently that's less than usual years, but yeah, that was just something that he brought up. And basically, through our discussion, it just kind of ended up with, oh, the culture at Rice about like taking courses and how to advise students to like not overload and being healthy and kind of stuff like that. So overall, the discussion really just ended up with that we want to kind of look at data of what the freshmen are doing, so like how many classes they're taking, like stuff like that, and then also trying to create more minors. So I don't really, because there are other institutions, and they don't really like specify which ones, that do cap on how many majors and minors and degrees you can get. So yeah, that was also, I don't think anything is really gonna come with that, at least right now. It was just something that he's like, oh, let's talk about this. Yeah, and the last thing was we just passed the RSEL certificate. So they just came up with a really long document of all the stuff related to RSEL. So all the classes you would take, all the goals and things you would get from it and stuff like that. Yes?
Do you want to talk about what type of changes task forces use whenever they're looking at
Okay. So another thing is, I'm also, so there's like a curriculum task force, and that consists of people on the CUC, the student representatives from the CUC, and the academic chairs. So that's like 4 or 5 of us. Yeah, 5 of us. So basically we had a meeting and we wanted to try to get like student feedback of what they thought were good alternate solutions. I actually brought this up to the senator meeting last night, and I think there was kind of a consensus. I thought that we wanted to possibly wait until we actually had concrete data ourselves too. So I don't know, because the original plan was we were going to have a survey, and it was going to be like an open-ended survey. So it'd be like, this is what's going on. This is what some students have proposed. What do you think about this proposal? What do you think would be best as a solution to this problem, or something like that? And the problem that we kind of like brought up was, well, how do they know what's best if they don't know really the bigger picture of like the problem or like what's going on? So I don't really know where we're at with that. Yes.
For the registrar's data, is that just going to be like when courses are added and dropped, or are they also like asking students why they dropped courses again, like they did with the last survey?
I don't think they're doing a survey. I think it's just going to be like pure numbers.
So
It would be like how many classes were
course
dropped.
enrollment from day to day or whatever the time
Yeah,
is.
so far, actually, they brought this up at the past meeting, was when we met, it was the end of week 3, which means that the ad deadline had already ended, and this was starting a period of basically dropping with no adding. So apparently through the week 3, 200 spots were dropped. So they don't really have any data as to why students dropped it, so that's kind of like a
So
downside to
we're going to
that.
be in the same place we were.
Basically, but they're gonna have like actual numbers and stuff like that this time around. Yeah, I don't think, they didn't mention anything about doing another survey of like why you're dropping the class. No.
Do you think it would add on one questionnaire if you drop like, you drop spots, you know, like ABC?
Yeah, I can ask if like they can do that. It's kind of late. I mean, there's only a couple more weeks. I don't know how fast they would like be able to get to that.
I think what Brian was asking about earlier was how many of all the 200 dropped from classes that were fully registered for. Because that was the data we were interested in getting,
Yeah.
and we wondered whether we could get access to that data.
Okay, so right now, like, David Tenney just printed out this one graph and was like, here's a graph, this is week 3, but he didn't, like, I don't know, it was super general, and even, so Gene Hutch was there, and he also said, like, this graph is really misleading, like, it doesn't say anything, so it was pretty much addressed that, like, okay, this isn't what the goal is, it was just to get a general idea of, oh, this many spots were dropped, so I don't know how many were from full courses.
But moving forward, looking at getting the data from week 3 to week 7, can we specifically request for data of how many people dropped from fully registered classes versus others, and whether it's also across different kind of majors? Because I know that's an ongoing discussion, whether it's issue faced by certain, major classes or fully registered classes.
Sure, yeah, I'll definitely, yes.
Can I say something about the majors?
Oh, yeah.
Just a comment, like in further discussions, keep in mind that some majors are bigger than others.
Yeah.
So if I get 3 humanities majors, it's going to be about the same as an engineering major plus a humanities major.
Yeah. Yes.
One thing like way back, I think spring 2013, we suggested when we were initially talking about doing the CUC survey was adding course reviews for classes that people dropped rather than just having reviews on classes that people completed, because that might give us some insight into what people who dropped the course thought about the course, both as a more informative way of reviewing courses and as a way of potentially understanding some of the drops. So that might be something that just to float again.
Do you know like what came out of that conversation last time?
It was just mentioned in
And
an
then
essay
dropped.
meeting, and
Okay.
I think that ultimately led to the survey that we had last year.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so next up, in context of that, we're bringing up the revised Senate Resolution number 3. to talk about. I think everyone should have received, okay, we got to download it. Yeah. So everyone should have received this in their mailbox. So we now open the floor for discussion.
So I brought up this issue with McMurtry's PAAs tonight at dinner. I thought that that was an angle that we needed to explore, especially because they're at the front lines of academic advising. And this was along with the Associate Director of the OAA, Brad Blunt. And the common consensus was yes, we were against the W, but was also that we were not against it for the reasons that this legislation said, but that we were against it for going against what the culture of Rice, what the PAs were pushing the culture of Rice to be. So exploration, being able to have the power to explore different kinds of classes, different like levels of difficulty, and not having like a hammer being brought down if you were to drop that class after the second week. So after speaking with them about this legislation, they're like, yes, this might be true, but for us and for us being able to see and advise people as they're picking classes, this is why we think it would be harmful to students. So I think that that could be an angle that we should explore.
So if we look at the first resolved, it says that the Student Association opposes the CUC proposal and urges the CUC and or the Faculty Senate to replace it with a more effective improvement to the as-brought policies that is better able to address students' registration difficulties while preserving their ability to take full advantage of the depth and breadth of Rice's course offerings. There's also wording about broadening their horizons and exploring new areas of study. So while, yes, the preamble does deal with the data that were offered in support of the CUC proposal and essentially counters that as data that do in fact support the proposal, what we are saying is the opinion of the student body, I think, is very much consistent with what you just brought up as far as really the reason that this is most problematic is because it discourages students from taking courses that they're not committed to take at week 2. And the courses that they're not committed to take at week 2 are the courses that they're not sure about, where they're taking a risk or where they're broadening their horizons.
I just want to mention, since I'm a co-author of this declaration, we did try to tone down some of the more aggressive wording, per se. And I went over this with the senators yesterday at our meeting, and one of the things we decided was, especially with this new news from the CUC, we think it's really important to get something passed that talks about at least our general opinion on the situation. As you may have noticed on this newest version of the document, we got rid of some of the sections discussing a very specific solution. However, we are highlighting that we want to work towards a narrowly tailored solution. So this does leave room for people to come up with a solution and amend it, but we think that for the sake of time and for the sake of getting our opinion on record, it's important to have this passed, at least showing our opposition to the move.
Also on the discussion of solutions, like just because this might not mention a super valid solution right now, that doesn't mean we can't bring one up later on when we have more data and information about this topic.
Can we scroll down and see the solution?
That's not the second to most recent version.
Basically, in the most recent version, those
The specific solutions were struck because of a lack of senator support. Those being solutions that we wanted to really definitively say the student body is okay with. So right now what it says about solutions is that we support a narrowly tailored solution to this problem that improves the registration experience without unduly burdening students' ability to register for and drop courses or to otherwise make responsible academic decisions, broaden their horizons, and explore new areas of study. And that we would like the CUC to consider both student input and the registrar's data in generating alternative solutions, especially since the CUC will basically be discussing this simultaneously with us getting the data if we're going to get that data at all.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. Those lines.
And we can always follow up with another resolution if we see the data and say, here, based on these data, this is what we think should be the solution.
But the goal here is really just to have something on record, especially if the October date might cause further review of this.
So has there been any discussion, I guess, in the senators meeting or in kind of meetings with the authors about having kind of a proposal or mentioning the fact that, yes, like, we would like to see the data if we can, or like, here's the kind of committee that we're planning on putting together to think about this, like, simultaneously with the CUC or before the CUC starts thinking about it? Have we thought about that? Why that would it be a good idea? Because kind of saying, like, we hope that you consider our input. It might be better to say, like, here's specific ways that we want you to consider our input.
What about like resolve the student association strongly encourages the CUC to present its proposal to student senate before it puts it on the floor of faculty senate for voting?
I think that
Do you want us to ask for the data?
I mean, I think asking for the data is probably better served in like a separate email to the people involved. But I think what Robbie just said, just putting it concretely that like the SA wants to see this and wants to be a part, and isn't just kind of criticizing them and saying, consider our input, and not giving like a way to get our input. I think that might be a little more helpful, I guess.
So resolve that the student association requests that the CUC present any subsequent proposal. This would be after the one about the registrar's data. Any subsequent proposal on this topic to the student senate prior to the faculty senate? Is that
Prior to introduction of faculty.
introduction in the faculty senate in order to allow students to provide informed comments and input. Or informed.
I just think that makes us a little bit more of a partner and a little less of a burden. At least.
Cool. Any other thoughts?
I'd like to commend y'all on rewording this. Y'all put a lot of effort into it.
Is there a motion to vote?
Motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Or, I guess this is.
Okay, oh, you're
Right, so pull up the handy text code tool. Okay, no, you can't do that. Whoever said Bartell is not a college. Well, okay, vote here. Only if you're a voting member. If you're not, then don't vote. Okay, cool. So while these are coming in, we can go ahead and start talking about SRF4. Actually, this would be kind of dramatic. Well, there be two. Okay, so then I guess Nick isn't here. Oh, he is here. You want to come up and facilitate discussion?
So this is the legislation for the EMS housing in charge. Is there anything that your guys' colleges or any of you have any concerns before we vote on it? Because today's the day we're gonna vote on it. Yes.
I just have one question. You guys are not like is in charge supervisor because the Will-Rice wording says supervisor, but
Yeah. Yes, it's called
Same
EMS.
thing, okay.
Yeah, like I don't know if you've seen any of them wear the shirts that says like EMS supervisor. So it's the same thing.
Okay.
We're moving. Their official name is in charge.
Okay.
But
I'm just making sure
yeah,
that's-
yeah. It's like the same. You can it's synonymous.
A wording. Okay.
Good question. Anything else?
Cool. So I think we're missing 2 votes.
Great.
But I think pretty clearly this will pass in any case. Olivia will follow up with the people who didn't make their voice heard because you have to. Cool. So can we pull up the SRO4? Oh, is there a motion to vote on SRO4? Second. All right. All those. Well, no, we can do that. Can you refresh it? Cool. All right. Okay, cool. So this looks like it's pretty clearly passing. Okay, so who voted on that but didn't vote on one before? Seriously? Okay, so quick interlude before we finish up. I was looking through some old surveys we had, thought this was funny. The question is, what do you believe makes a rice paper unique in universities? The fact that I was intoxicated most of the time. Alright, cool. Go ahead. So just to finish up, last week we started off with with 2 of the 4 kind of discussion points that we were talking about. I crossed out the dates because that's all just basically pushed back 2 weeks, I think. But yeah, basically just looking at specific issues, and then groups of people kind of provide directions or kind of next steps to Senate after talking about it a little bit. So the first one, I don't remember what the last 2 were, but they're in the minutes. But here's the next 2. So basically, it's campus-wide announcements and calendars, so I feel like this idea has kind of come up a couple of different times. But basically, each college sends out their own announcements via their college secretaries to their own college listservs, and then you students dash out reaches the college secretaries. But the college secretaries really have their, they can do whatever they want. They can put it together in a PDF or in the email itself, or they can add attachments. And then a variety of campus-wide organizations, such as athletics, such as student association, we get one a month, have the ability to send out bulk email to students. So one of the projects from Nathan's year as a senator was to make a campus-wide calendar. I think they put it together, but it kind of fizzled apart one year, and we currently don't really have a campus-wide calendar for events that are happening across campus. So the idea is are there better ways that we can use college announcements across campus? GSA does this thing where they have a standardized, on Wednesday of each week it goes out, you have to send in your announcement by Tuesday at some time for it to be included. And it's a little bit more rigid so that people know where to go if they want to send out an announcement, and they know it's going to get included if they submit by this time. Is that something that might work for us, or do we like the system where it gets sent out by the college secretaries? Is there a need for a campus-wide calendar? Would they help kind of campus-wide involvement across the board in different organizations, athletics, things like that? So I don't know if there's any initial thoughts on.
Yeah, I guess I know I talked to some of the secretaries for each college in the past, and a lot of them feel it's overwhelming, the number of emails that they get, and they can't kind of decide which ones belong and which ones don't, I guess. And so kind of I think it'd be a great idea, because the way I'd like to see it is the college listservs, the college secretaries would send out things that are college related, and campus-wide events would go out on a campus-wide listserv. Just because I think it's also a lot of work on people who are planning events or presidents of clubs that are trying to figure out who to send emails to. I mean, I know as president I've gotten emails being I'm not sure who to send this to. Can you send this out on your listserv kind of thing? And so if you had a standard kind of deadline and a person, a contact person to send something to. I think it'd be a lot easier for those club presidents and other things as well, to kind of send out standardized announcements.
So I think one of the issues here is we have to find someone that's gonna manage this, like, campus-wide listserv, because people hate getting emails. And we don't wanna have different emails for every single thing, which is what the secretaries currently present for happening. So I think we have to figure out some way to make it standardized so that all of the emails are still sent out maybe in a full capacity, but from one message, but it also is that going to be a student position, is that going to be hire someone, or how do we handle that?
I mean, my worry with this is that we create a really great standardized system and we really want it to work, but then what currently still happens, even with the current system, is, oh, now that I'm the Love It rep from, food club or whatever, I'm gonna then send out not only to the announcements, but I'm also gonna send out my own personal email to the listserv, because since I'm from Love It, I think that's also a Love It announcement. So I feel like there's a possibility for people to just say, okay, yes, I'm gonna use this kind of campus-wide system, but I'm also gonna have, each club's gonna still have these college reps who then send out another email at the college, and it's just gonna be the same. So I think we have to work together to set, I guess, like boundaries on like the college listservs, because right now they're kind of this weird hybrid, and so if we did this, we'd have to really make sure they were only college stuff.
Chris, then TJ.
At the same time, I think we should also look at how this might change involvement, because a lot of people maybe won't want to go and look at this calendar to see what they want to do, which might make them less informed about what's going on around campus, and then not go to those events.
Well, on that note, it doesn't hurt to have a calendar. No one, if people don't look at it, they don't look at it, but it'd be nice to have, I think. On Megan's point, each college manages their own listserv, and so I don't think there should be any mandate from the SA on what can go into a college listserv. Like, as a college, you can take care of that yourself. If you don't want it, don't approve it. Doesn't work in Hanson, we have no listserv, but I think that should just be all about the policies.
So one of the student initiatives this year is understanding student involvement and attendance, and this basically is exactly what they're trying to solve, like the balance of how to increase awareness about events on campus while, like Chris said, like making sure there's still a way for people to get involved. So probably in a few months there will be some sort of standard proposal that will hopefully deal with this issue.
I think maybe a way to solve, or like do this, like email would be like the SA secretary maybe consolidates like a lot of the events and sends out one bulk email, but organizing them like has a specific format, so like has like specific like this section is for like biochemistry related events, and then like so it's one bulk email and everyone can like just go to that email. Maybe it's like sent out every 2 weeks or something, but then you have to make sure that whoever wants to get that email sends prior notice.
Yeah, so the way the GSA email works, we look at it, they have a table of contents before the email, and they separate it into categories. So I don't remember what their categories are, but we were thinking maybe something along the lines of maybe different departments, service opportunities around campus, different clubs. And then for the calendar, I'm also working with our staff side. He says there could possibly be a way to like personalize the calendar so that if you are, let's say, interested in biochemistry, it'll only show you click a box or something that will say, show me only biochemistry events, because I'm not in an IE sport, so I don't want to see all the different IE sports that are going on. But we're still looking at some technologies available for that.
Okay, so in interest of time, we're going to stop the discussion on that. Again, if you're interested in that, you can be on the when Google talks about it. Okay, so the last thing of the meeting. So number 4 is looking at the blanket tax process. So each year, we students pay an aggregate sum of $400,000 of required student fees that are allocated across different student organizations. So there's the breakdown there of what organizations get what. Each year, blanket tax spending is audited via the blanket tax review process, which was recently amended last year. And basically, to even recommend a review of an organization's spending practices, it must first be referred to a contingency committee by the blanket tax review committee, and then it must be found in violation 3 times in a period of 4 years, or 2 times if specific criteria are met. And then there must be a 2/3 majority vote with 20% of the student body to amend or remove a blanket tax organization that's not setting it in line with kind of like the spirit and rules of blanket tax. And then to add a blanket tax, it requires a 2/3 majority of the student vote with 20% turnout. So this is a pretty complicated and very strict process, and so some questions coming out of that are, are current blanket tax amount allocations in line with what student priorities are? Is this kind of way of allocating a certain amount and having it reviewed each year with kind of the only way of amending it to be over a period of 3, potentially 4 years? Is that a workable system? Does this allocations process really encourage responsible use of money? Are there other kind of like paradigms for allocating student money? So like some other universities do something where there's just a pool of student money and that gets reallocated out to organizations each year based on their priorities, based on their needs, based on their proof of like we actually need to use this money. So basically this is looking at, do our current processes work? Are there other processes that make more sense for this like huge amount of the huge like sum of money that students put into the system? So I guess thoughts.
I like the idea of a pool of money. Yeah, I just think that it allows for like more year-to-year like decisions, and I think it's a more flexible system.
Yeah, I think like going off Andrew's point, when the presidents were talking about Rally Club, we were like, oh wow, this would be a great idea. Let's get some campus-wide funding for it. There's just not a process to do that in any kind of way that works on the timeline. And so I think that alone is like a very recent kind of visible example of like how hard it is to start a kind of campus-wide activity initiative. Yeah.
I like everything about the pool idea except that it would require the involvement of, it would basically require that staff members be heavily involved in deciding where the money goes, and that's student money, which right now we can vote on as students, rather than delegating to a couple of students who may have their own priorities and biases. And I think part of the reason that the current blanket tax process is the way it is so that you don't get like one particular blanket tax committee that's just like, I hate this organization, we're gonna get rid of their money. Because there have been people whose, that was their goal on blanket tax committee, was to cut a certain organization's funds. And it's somewhat worrisome how you would do that with just a handful of student representatives on some sort of committee, although based on the voters' record on blanket tax decisions, I don't know that I'm really more confident in that either.
Okay, cool. So basically, as I said before, really what we wanted is a couple people on each of these issues. The 2 presented today, 2 presented last week, to really think about this, discuss this, to gauge opinion, and then so I'll formally appoint these small groups of people next week. If you're interested, send me an email, and then 2 weeks from then they'll come back to Senate and kind of talk through what they've come to and initial recommendations for Senate, and then we can kind of move forward from there on the ones that are the most interesting, the ones that kind of have the most potential. Equally good outcome of this is to say all 4 of these are terrible ideas and we shouldn't do any of them. So at least we're thinking about it. So yeah, if you're interested, people are interested, let me know. It's open to pretty much anyone, so you can ask people your colleges too. That's pretty much it. If there's not any announcements, I asked Joan if we could do queso next week. I don't know why. So yeah, any announcements?
And as stars, make sure to stay for the picture.
Cool. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Second.